Good morning. This week's Torah portion is Parshas Tzav. Tzav means to command. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell Moshe Tzav es Aaron? Why isn't enough the usual expression, which is daber, speak, or emor, talk to? Why is it necessary to tzav, to command? And although there are interpretations such as tzav miyadu l'doros, immediately and for future generations, it's not something that is going to happen in the future, but it's immediate. But still, many of the mitzvahs of kahuna were immediate, and you don't have the word tzav there. So Rashi brings the quotation for Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai says that whenever there is a situation that can bring a loss of money, you must give the person, if there's a mitzvah there, even though he may lose some money, you have to go ahead and make sure that he does so with alacrity. Because a mitzvah, even a mitzvah that has with it a loss of money, one must do with enthusiasm, with levedikite, with all of one's neshama, and with all of one's resources, financial as well as intellectual and personal. The question, though, is what exactly is the chesaron kis, is the lack of money, the loss of money that exists with this mitzvah of removing the ashes from the altar? What kind of loss of money is there? And the best answer, of course, I'm biased, but the best answer is from the Rabbi, Lubavitcher Rebbe, who says that the obligation to have a fire, and not just an ordinary fire that had several pyres on it, from wood, using wood that was of the finest woods in Eretz Yisrael. You weren't allowed to use certain woods which would destroy the fruit of Eretz Yisrael, such as olives or figs and so on. But they used fine wood. The wood could not be have any kind of knots in them. The wood would have to be the kind of wood without any worms. It had to be fine logs and fine branches without any blemishes. So it had to be from the finest specimens of trees that grew in Eretz Yisrael. And this had to be constant. And sometimes there were a number of fires that had to be lit and were on at the same time, even though the purpose of that was for one small thing. For example, they had to have a fire for the incense, and that fire for the incense was there for the morning and the evening, and they had to light the fire and have the wood there burning the whole time. It's a waste of money. Why have a specially designated pyre of lots and lots and lots of wood just for the incense? Use the regular fire and get coals from the regular fire, and so on and so forth. So therefore, since this was 24/7 and it wasn't in constant use, why should there be a fire the whole time? We were prohibited from extinguishing it. There are no sacrifices, or if there are no fats, you still have to have the fire on the altar. So that's the loss of money, and people would be saying, well, we need to have the Beis Hamikdash frugal and shouldn't waste anything, don't waste, don't want. Afal Pikena, Torah Baruch Hu says that there has to be a fire constantly, because the fire on the altar represents the fire of a Jew. The fire of a Jew has to be constant. You have to constantly be toiling in the mitzvahs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and do so with enthusiasm. And as the Rebbe once said, meine Talmidim, my students, have more hanur from the kezayis mor, from the olive size of bitter herbs of the horseradish, than someone else's Talmidim have from drinking 4 sweet cups of wine. You're supposed to go ahead and have hanur and enthusiasm even in mitzvahs that you don't have pleasure from. And so the fire on the altar represents the fire in the heart of each Jew and has to be constant. Therefore, the fire should not be extinguished at all. So there's a last, whenever there is a lack of money, you have to have alacrity. There are people in this community, in the Detroit Orthodox Jewish community, they may even be rabbis. In fact, I happen to know it is a rabbi. And in fact, I know his identity now. I gave you several videos of my concern where someone went ahead and told a congregant that who inadvertently used Lubavitcher Shchita that he had to kosher his dishes. Subsequently to that, the person who told me that denied he ever said it. He said it to me. But I didn't know the identity of the rabbi. Now I know the identity of the rabbi. How do I know the identity of the rabbi? Because, as we said, when it comes to loss of money, you have to have alacrity. So a new food outlet opened up, and this rabbi was there telling the person who might have some kind of connection to Lubavitch that under no circumstances does he want that the Shor Habor should be visible in the should be visible to the customers. And I found out who it was. It wasn't so difficult, but I found out ultimately who this was. And I know who you are. I know who your Rebbe is. This is the wrong thing to have alacrity about. As I told the audience, Shor Habor has a line of shachtim that are 95% the same as the line for errands. The difference is 1 or 2 people, maybe 1 person. Maybe you have an additional mashgiach for Shor Habor that they don't have for errands. Errands was started by Rabbi Rubashkin. I don't know if you know that. Rabbi Rubashkin was Lubavitcher. He was Nifter. And one of his children, Shalom Mordechai, is the one that we all prayed for and davened for, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should release him. So Aaron Rubashkin's name is on errands, and that's used as a block or as an attempt to censor in quiet and silence Shor Habor, which was under the Crown Heights Rabbi's Hechsher. And this is just astounding, how a person can come without any busha, without any embarrassment, and to tell a store owner that he doesn't want, because he's a rabbi, and he does not approve of Shor Habor, doesn't want it in the case. I don't understand how the person can have the chutzpah to say that, but it's understood in light of this week's parsha. Wherever there is a hefsid moment, a loss of money, so you have to have alacrity. So this person was alacric, whatever you want to call it. He had alacrity. Immediately he had to go to the new place and to tell the owner that in no circumstances does he want Shor Habor. Why? Because there are other products that other rabbis give a hechsher to that want to supplant or replace Shor Habor. So I will tell you the following. The Rebbe started the Lubavitch movement once again in the yeshiva in 1950 and 1951. I lived in Crown Heights then. I was not a Lubavitcher. My mother comes from Neville, the same city as Rabbi and Rabashkin, and she grew up with him. My uncle, Beryl, went to Cheder together with his brother Gabriel. Should live and be well. But I didn't go to Lubavitch. And we looked at Lubavitch as a strange bunch of people. How many boys were there in the yeshiva at the time? 40, 50 boys. How many could fit into the Zal? The top room in 770. 30, 40 boys at the maximum. And with those 30, 40 boys, the Rebbe worked and developed an organization that today has over 6,000 shluchim, 5,000 offices worldwide. And the Pew analyst, Pew Analytics, has determined that 37% of the Jewish people in the world have their first, or their perhaps sometimes their only connection to Judaism through a Chabad shliach, through a Chabad office. We're now looking at what's going on in Ukraine. There are some Rabbonim in Ukraine, but the vast majority of Rabbonim in Ukraine, the vast majority of those who deal with orphans and widows, give food to the hungry, the vast majority of those people are from Chabad, from Lubavitch. The vast majority of those who are staying there under the bombardments are Lubavitch. Do you really think that this is an effort that the Eibishter wants you to do? Do you really think that this is L'Shem Shamayim? Do you really think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy with you for what you said? I don't think so. But neither you nor I have been in Shamayim. Your Rebbe has also not been in Shamayim, and he hasn't come back yet. I know who he is. My Rebbe was a Himmel Yid. I saw with my own eyes that his eyes were like Rav's eyes, that they could look at you and they could shake up your neshama, and Chas v'Sholem could take it if he wanted to. I saw that with my own eyes. I'm not joshing here. I saw miracles happen with my Rebbe. And my teachers were all holy men. And I stand by that. My Rebbe, my Mashpia was Rav Shlomo Chaim Kesselman. And if I was not a Chosid, I would say Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Livrocha. And my Rosh Hashiva was Nochem Trebnik, whose brother was the Chavrusa of Rav Moshe Feinstein. My Maggid Shir was Rav Moshe Lando, who served as the Rav of Bnei Brak for close to 40 years, maybe 50 years. I don't know where you're coming from. I also received those messages from people who said hateful things. But I would have thought that today, Bisman Hazeh, such a difficult time when Klal Yisrael is being bombarded and people have to run for their lives, that there would be something else on your mind other than threatening a store that he would have a boycott, because he would place Shor Habor in the counter. It's silly. And it's petty. And it's unbecoming. Sure, Habur will not go out of business. Lubavitch has enough offices worldwide. They don't need your support. But let me tell you this. I saw the Shochtim, the Lubavitcher Shochtim in Montreal, Zalman Morozov, Heshket Zettel, Olav Hasholim, and Semach Gurevich, Olav Hasholim. And there's a sheikh labeled Turk who's a Lubavitcher, who didn't start out as Lubavitch. And people in the know that the best shochtim in North America were Lubavitchers. My mother's uncle, Rabbi Yisrael Konsen, was a shtod sheikhet when he was 15 years old. He was also an Ilui Otzim. At age 16, he was the mashgiach, answering shilas for 18, 19-year-old boys in Yeshiva Nevel. When Yisrael Konsen came to the United States to see the Rebbe, one of the biggest rabbonim in the world offered him a job, a major job, to be a sheikhet in the middle states. I don't know if it was Kansas or Nebraska. One of the major rabbonim wanted him as a sheikhet. Why him? If Lubavitch is so terrible, why somebody who went to Radin, who was considered one of the Gedolei Hader, whom I met several times, whom I heard from Divrei Torah several times, why would he ask my granduncle to be the sheikhet for him if his Lubavitch is so terrible when it comes to shchita? And the answer is because they were the best shochtim. How dare you go ahead and do what you've done? How dare you? That's all I can say. It's a shame. I will not divulge who you are, but I do know.